AI didn't just happen overnight. It's been going on since the 50s, right? But I don't think it was really publicly understood what AI could do until we started to see the chatbots and the explosion of these new models and the LLMs that were out there making decisions for us.
Welcome back to Trust Versus, a podcast powered by HighTrust, a leader in cybersecurity assurances. My name is Jeremy Hubel, Innovation Officer with HighTrust. I'm joined by Robert and Ryan. Robert?
Hey, everyone. Robert Booker, Strategy at HighTrust.
Ryan Patrick, VP of Adoption at HighTrust.
To set the stage for this episode, we've been seeing and thinking and talking internally and with the market about sort of AI's impact on TPRM. Ryan, why is this even important to HighTrust?
Yeah, I mean, we have a really great guest that's going to be joining us, Laz. But before we bring him in, I think we really need to figure out and set the stage of where TPRM is at today. I have my own personal opinions about whether it's efficient or not, whether it's actually getting the job done, whether it's alleviating stress or creating more stress for all parties involved. But the question remains, are we functional from a TPRM process or perspective, or are we broken, or does it need some evolution? And I guess that's a question for the two of you is, what's your gut reaction, one-line response for that?
I think it continues to be so critical, Ryan, but it's got to get better. It's got to be more efficient, and we have to take the complication out of it, and we have to make it more achievable and more approachable for the market. And I think tools like AI and the capability AI bring help, but the problem of securing AI and doing AI assurance complicates the problem. So it's the time for us to really have this conversation and try to get it right.
Well, I think third-party risk management is an ongoing challenge that organizations should continue to seek opportunities to make more efficient, but also continue to challenge themselves on what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow or today, given, technology changes, customers change, risk profiles change, and impact is just one of those changes that people are reacting to. And I think that's the focus of this conversation with Laz about kind of what's happening in this world that we've just set the stage for. Maybe Robert, can you give us an intro to who we're joined by today?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. No, we're joined today by Laz. He's actually a longtime leader in the industry and a friend of us, all of us that have worked on this problem for a long time, and really recognized by a number of organizations focused on AI as well as business security problems as a individual that has deep experience looking at fraud, looking at data and security programs, and working across many industries, whether it be financial services, retail, technology. And as Ryan was just saying, it's something that we really need to understand and talk about and continue to evolve in. And I think the conversation with Laz was really rich as he kind of unpacked where we sit right now as an industry, this AI moment that we're all living through and potentially some of us are enduring right now. And thinking about it from a business leader perspective, as well as a security leader perspective. How do we think about staying ahead on it? How do we think about the governance of AI systems? Is it a data protection problem, a compliance problem? And ultimately, what actually works. And sprinkled into the midst of all of that is this third-party risk problem, which is driving a lot of these conversations. So I thought it was a fluid conversation. It went in a lot of different places. We kind of bounced around a little bit on it, but I think that's actually really rich and valuable. So join us as we talk to Laz. I thought it was a really interesting and rich conversation.
Let's get into it.
We're really glad to be joined by Laz today, and Ryan and Jeremy, my two co-hosts here at Trust Versus. And we're having a little bit of a debate around this topic of AI and where AI is going, and third-party risk management and how AI complicates that. And it reminded me a lot of a conversation I had with a chief medical officer of a fairly large hospital system very late last year, and the conversation went something along the lines of, well, we want to ask all of the people that supply our system to not use our data in AI. So our going in position from a TPRM and a contracting position is, thou will not use AI. But then I'm realizing as the CMO that every system we work with now, be it Epic or McKesson or other systems is all about using AI in various contexts now. So I just don't think that's real. And so the question they asked of me was, well, what should we do? Should we just say no AI, or AI is okay, or let AI go on? And I confess I was woefully unprepared to give an intelligent answer. I can talk about what makes up AI systems and maybe the inherent risk of those systems. We should talk about some of that today. But the bottom line is it's just a big debate. Ryan, who's our VP of adoption, works with a ton of high trust customers and people that are really at the sharp end of trying to figure out how to solve these thorny problems. Ryan, let me turn the mic to you and let's just get going into it.
Yeah, TPRM, generally speaking, primarily from a cybersecurity perspective, but I think it really spans all the risk domains that you would find in TPRM is broken. And I've been on my soapbox for quite some time trying to draw attention to the challenges in TPRM today, but they're not necessarily new challenges. Organizations, they span the spectrum. There's some that are really, really mature and have comprehensive programs, and they're actually doing some decent work from a due diligence perspective to manage their vendors. But unfortunately, they're a small population. And on the opposite end, there's organizations that are completely immature. They're barely doing anything. If they're doing something, it's probably just a checkbox. But like any bell curve, the overwhelming majority of folks are sitting right in the middle. But regardless of where you sit in that spectrum, the challenges still are resonant. And it really boils down to a couple different things. TPRM teams are under-resourced. They're not getting the resources, whether it's time, people, or money, to do appropriate due diligence on their vendors, not only upfront based on their inherent risk, but in a continuous fashion moving forward. Because as we know, products, services, technologies, threats, they are constantly evolving. So just because you do one point in time assessment doesn't mean that you're good to go with that vendor moving forward. So you couple the fact that they're completely under-resourced with the fact that there's no standardization, whether it's in healthcare or any industry for that matter, on what's an acceptable way of doing that due diligence, whether it be just straight up risk assessments through questionnaires, which don't get me on my soapbox about questionnaires. I want them as much as possible to be gone. It could be high trust. It could be SOC 2. It could be some flavor of NIST. It's really across the board open season on the types of stuff that people are either asking for or providing. So and I'll make up the numbers, just try to demonstrate what I'm talking about, is if I'm a organization that has 500 vendors and I'm willing to accept high trust, I'm willing to accept SOC 2, 853, maybe PCI, which I never understand when people accept PCI for TPRM. You name it, I'm willing to accept it. ISO. What I've just done is I've created more work for myself because I actually have to dig into those reports if I'm doing the right things to understand where they are from a maturity perspective about the controls that matter to me. And when you're comparing 500 PDFs to each other, you've just created hours and hours, probably not enough people hours to actually review that evidence or that information and make intelligent decisions on what the residual risk of that organization may be based on the relationship that you have with them as a supplier, or vendor, or a third party. So what the outcome is that TPRM teams, the analysts themselves, are just trying to get through that one assessment to get onto the next one, to get onto the next one. And it's becoming a really inefficient assembly line.
Hey, Laz, so we're listening to Ryan talk about the challenge of TPRM broadly, but then we had this thing of AI, which I know you were just really a part of, looking at the RSA conference, and you've been a student of for some time. So it feels like it's clearly hurting us, or it's going to hurt this problem of TPRM already, but maybe it'll help some in the future. What say you about this? I mean, where do you think the world is at right now?
Yeah, so I think what we need to do, and when we're talking with Ryan, one of the things I would ask Ryan, if I can bubble it up, Robert, I will answer your question in a second, but I think the one thing that keeps me awake at night is for TPRM, who owns it? Is it procurement? Is it legal? Is it the CISO? Is it an analyst? So Ryan, who owns it? Who should own it?
That's the direction I was going in. Is that's actually the foundational issue with TPRM is there's so many stakeholders. Everybody has a voice. And oh, by the way, the voices in the room all have political agendas or business objectives, right? So you have, and I'll just make up a really quick scenario. You may have the CISO or someone in procurement that is just trying to do due diligence with a vendor and identifies a bunch of risk with this vendor. But the business owner, the one that wants to bring them in, may have better or higher political capital within the organization, and they can overrule that.
And that's unfortunate because we're all trying to do the right thing for the business, right?
I totally agree with you, but this is the rub with TPRM right now is not only is there not enough collaboration with our vendors, generally speaking, and I could talk for an hour just on providing really detailed full reports versus requesting really detailed full reports and the inability to do both versus the collaboration internal for that organization that is just trying to manage the vendor. So I wish I had a silver bullet answer for you, Laz, on who owns it. But like any good security professional, I'm going to say it depends. It depends on who owns the who's been given the responsibility in that organization based on the organizational culture. But once that authority and that responsibility has been given, everybody else needs to kind of fall in line, if you will, and support the person who's been given that authority and that responsibility to manage risk, or it's just going to fall apart. So it could be the CISO, could be procurement, could be legal, could be anybody, but whoever it is needs to be supported by everybody else.
Okay, good. Okay, so now we have TPRM that's owned by somebody, and there's going to be, and I agree with you, Ryan, I think sadly, what I've experienced, and Robert, you touched on this, like what did I see at RSA? TPRM was in every conversation. And that was, I'm asking Ryan what he's seeing out there. And the feedback I had from, my clients and the feedback I had at RSA is there is no silver bullet for TPRM. That's part one. Who is the owner? And it for a variety of responses, it depends. Size of the company, maturity of the program. Maybe there's a lot of red tape. Maybe there's little red tape and, building those relationships. But I think for TPRM, for me, what I've always found is if we could tie that to a business outcome, and I think some of the pain that I've experienced personally as a CISO and a practitioner is it's different for every organization. And what do I mean by that? So Ryan's hinting at maybe I've got dozens of vendors that I have to manage in third-party risk, or maybe it's hundreds of vendors depending on the size of the organization. Is there a way so we can have a shared governance model across the entire company to make sure that I'm going to be successful with TPRM, whether legal owns it or procurement or finance or the CISO? And as the CISO, I have to think about how do I build those relationships so I can call them and ask for an assistance when I need it. Because, those 800-page questionnaires with 20 tabs and 1,000 rows deep about NIST, ISO, OWASP AI, and different things that are coming in, they're starting to become unmanageable in the old way. And what I mean by that is now, Robert, now let's talk about what happens. Third-party risk has been around for, decades, right? We've always looked at it through the lens of, hey, who am I working with and what's their background and experience? Then when we commercialized the internet and started to build these systems of systems, what we started to experience as practitioners and leaders is that I want my platform to be enabled by another platform. So some of the challenges with TPRM then, ownership, accountability. And now I have a system of systems that are integrating into my business environment with my business processes, and I may not have complete visibility. We saw this explode with the advent of cloud and cloud computing, right? And Ryan, let me ask you this. Where were you positioned, or, where were your clients working circa 2000-ish when people started talking about this cloud that we could start moving data to? Were they part of the, I'm not putting any PII or PHI or credit card data in the cloud, or, my ABA routing number and my bank account information? Or were they like, hey, look, this is tech, we've got to embrace it? Because that's the foundation of the systems of systems being exploited or becoming part of a bigger risk discussion.
You've hit on a human psychology type of question around early adopters versus late adopters, so on and so forth. And I think you're right that the cloud was indicative of what we're seeing with AI right now. And I actually draw that comparison.
That's where I was going,
folks.
You just drew the line. That's where I was going.
I'll actually volunteer one caveat to that. In my experience, there was hesitance to put sensitive data in clouds when clouds first came out. It feels like totally the opposite with AI. People are rushing to use this thing across businesses with a lot less regard to maybe this is sensitive data versus not. And it could be just anecdotal, but it seems to be maybe a pattern.
Yeah, I don't know that it's anecdotal at all. I worked for a Fortune 10 in those early heady days of cloud adoption, Laz, and I remember, I won't name the companies, but they are two of the three. Well, let's just say universally, the three major cloud providers in the market today. At that time, all had contractual restrictions to health services companies that, we will not allow you to do business with us in our cloud if you put electronic protected health information in our cloud. And then, so, it became sort of this untenable, like, well, how can I even agree to that with the business I have being all EPHI based? Then it became, well, actually, we're going to say we have no accountability for protecting that information because it's encrypted with a private key that only you hold. Therefore, we have no access to it. And therefore, we cannot be responsible for the obligations that the HIPAA security rule puts on you. I'm just going to say, hey, not me. You can't blame me. I'm not responsible.
Exactly.
But then the regulator said, being OCR in this case, and HHS said, sorry, Mr. Cloud Company, Ms. Cloud Company, you can't say that. You are accountable. You are regulated, and you will be responsible for protected health information, even if it's encrypted. And finally, I think it was about a 6 to 8 year shakeout. They've adopted it. Not only have they adopted it, but at least for the people we work with our inheritance and shared responsibility program, they are distinct in the market as saying we can actually not only do security better in the cloud, but we can provide you the ability to inherit security controls for things like HIPAA, PCI, other things in a manner that makes you more consistent. And drawing this back to the conversation we're having, it really is, Laz, to your point, the exact conversation we're having now about AI, except with Jeremy's caveat, those business owners that we all discussed a minute ago that are the real owners, in my opinion, of TPRM, they're the decision makers, are saying oftentimes without the concurrence of the IT department, and in some cases hiding their work from the CISO and from the compliance teams in their company, are putting almost all of their sensitive data into a generative AI context, which means we're just out of control.
So going back to your kind of like, hey, here's the evolution of tech and what the vendors were influencing us to do. We had to adopt cloud at some point. Everybody had to, because it became elastic and I could actually use it for seasonal events or daily events, or I could scale up or down, and it was very cost effective. Instead of doing something like ordering a server and the hardware and software to support it could take weeks or months.
Absolutely.
Now it could be up in minutes,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So the time to value moving to the cloud all of a sudden became minutes or seconds because it was so easy. And for me, and Ryan, thanks for acknowledging the fact we've got our early adopters or the laggards. And for anybody that's, that may be early in their career in tech, I would definitely encourage you to start understanding where you fit in that cycle, because I am we'll call it labs mentality. I like to get in the lab, see what's new, build, break, and figure out how it's going to impact the business. And then me as a practitioner, how I'm going to protect the business. Now, I use cloud as the starting point because when we talk about TPRM, we saw teams like, Robert and Jeremy and Ryan and I are talking about. Teams were telling us, we can't put that data there. We don't understand it yet. But there was a moment in time where it was the tipping point where we started to see people putting data in the cloud safely. And there were a lot of regs that came out, and a lot of the auditors and a lot of the businesses were looking at as like, hey, look, you know what? We've been doing this now for a number of years. We feel safe about doing this. Let's put it into the cloud. Now, let's turn that a little bit, because AI didn't just happen overnight. It's been going on since the 50s, right? There was a discussion with Alan Turing and the Turing paper about computers and humans coexist. And if you look at the timeline from the 50s, 1972, Meissen at Stanford University with the research on illness from, being determined. Could I take a blood sample and tell if I had an illness because of that blood sample? 1972 at Stanford, to, IBM and Watson winning on Jeopardy. Then all of a sudden, chatbots. It was like it was happening around us, but I don't think it was really publicly understood what AI could do until we started to see the chatbots and the explosion of these new models and the LLMs that were out there making decisions for us. That's part one. Part two of that is not only has it been around us building up for decades, it started to show up in all software products as enabled. Hey, don't you want to autofill this? Don't you want this to be easier? And the hard part for me has been when I'm working with the C-suite executives about enabling the business with new or emerging technology, AI is at the center of every discussion now. And so there's like it's polarizing basically, because now I've got cloud, TPRM, and I've got AI initiatives. AI will enable the business to do X. Okay, how do I protect the assets for that? Because it is different. It's similar to cloud with hey, I'm an early adopter. How do I make this work? How do I enable the business at the speed of innovation with AI, TPRM, and these things that are happening with the systems of systems? Because AI is enabled. You can't discount the way the industry is going. And being an early adopter gets tricky with AI. I don't know. I'm gonna unpack. I've unpacked a lot right there, but I wanted to make sure that we tie it all together, Robert, so we answer your question. The evolution of TPRM with cloud, now AI, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I want to put the point on this because, and then I want to move on a little bit. But the point on this, I think, is so. First of all, a couple things. I think there is a fallacy that Gen AI systems are sentient. I mean, and I do think that's probably more of a general consumer perspective. But I even find IT professionals and business leaders that almost look at these things as mystical in nature and don't recognize that, to the point I think you've made very artfully, Laz. This is just an enabling technology, an incredible and very powerful enabling technology. But just like cloud, and before that, client server computing, and before that, the internet computing. I mean, we've been in this generational evolution of tech, and we're, again, looking at the Moore's Law, we're kind of in this incredible upswing of technology.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but are you, okay, Ryan, Jeremy, Robert, when you talk about, you brought this up, and I had a discussion about this. I had a very, very deep discussion about Moore's Law at RSA. We're at the point where it's out of control. It's not, well, it was when Gordon Moore started his hypothesis about the chipsets becoming smarter, bigger, faster, cheaper, cooler. He was looking at it over a 10-year period. Then he reduced it down to 2 years, and then down to, somewhere between 18 and 24 months. Is it faster now? Have we broken Moore's Law? That was one of the topics at RSA, because you're hitting on four big things, Robert and Jeremy and Ryan: TPRM, AI, data governance, and then the speed of what is going to happen next with tech.
Absolutely. It's crazy. And it's an exciting time to be doing what we do, but it's also a little bit frightening. So Jeremy, I want to pivot to you a minute, because when the conversation too about cloud computing and AI, I think deserves a bit of a comment from you, because as we thought about AI risk management last year and AI assurance, and we talked a lot about the fact that people were going to use they were going to consume AI models from providers in the same way that they use cloud compute, cloud fabric. And so that was kind of built into your thinking. But when you think about everything you've been hearing so far and kind of the risk that this creates, sort of, I'll call them novel risk, but new risk or different ways of thinking, thoughts you might have about that as you were thinking about the creation, but also maybe questions you have for Laz, or just, kind of discussion around all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, adopting AI within an organization certainly brings about risks, and the organization itself has to implement controls internal to its walls to address those risks. But focusing on the TPRM side of the problem, it sort of gets compounded, right? Because all of a sudden, it's not one organization that you've got to worry about. It's all of the organizations that you, as an organization, use. So all your vendors and maybe all of their vendors. And so these novel and specific considerations for how to manage AI risk, now everybody's got to do it up and down your supply chain. And the question I had coming into this conversation is, are we ready collectively to handle those risks and identify those risks? Or do we collectively have a blind spot in the way we think about TPRM when it comes to AI risks? And Laz, I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Do you feel like we've all sort of got great buttoned up TPRM processes by way of asking the right inherent risk type questions when it comes to AI risk? And or is there learning still to be done? Where's the conversation?
That's a lot to address, Jeremy. It's almost like AI. Okay, let's just. And this is the way I approach it. AI is everywhere, and regardless of the questionnaires, the program, the governance that we have around it, sadly, we don't have visibility into everything yet. It is so early days that because everything's turned on, I think there's opportunities for improvement with AI monitoring, alerting, and the pieces around it for AI security and governance. I don't think it's been perfected yet. I don't think that executives, the board, or the security practitioners and CISOs can stand up with 100% confidence to say that their program is in place and they feel good about where they're at.
Not necessarily a counterpoint, but maybe something to add to your comments, Laz, because I totally agree with you. But what I'm seeing in my discussions and just generally looking across all industries is people are overthinking this to a certain degree. They're so intimidated by AI because they don't understand it, because it is so new, that they're just overwhelmed. And what I've been trying to tell folks is you already have existing processes generally that you can lean on. So don't try to create a brand new process or a brand new program to understand AI from a TPRM perspective. Use your existing program, but then you'll have to ask relevant questions in order to gain the visibility into, is AI present? The answer is more than likely yes, but what's the inherent risk of that AI? And then the hard part becomes, and this I think is more towards your point, is the individual or unique risks from an AI, which is not traditional security risk. But if you're completely overwhelmed by AI just from a process perspective, it's hamstringing you from actually addressing the things that are different. So I've been trying to tell folks, stop overthinking things and just use what you have.
I love that approach. And here's the challenge that I'm seeing out when you operationalize AI. I love using the existing processes, but the processes are typically broken because either the documentation or the checks and balances, the audit doesn't include the right pieces or parts. So if I'm adding these pieces and parts that need to be part of my new program, because not new program, but how about enhanced or augmented program? Because now I'm adding the AI pieces to it. And I think that's like part one. So I agree with you 100%. The other challenge that I'm faced with, so number one, I don't have to boil the ocean, right? I don't have to figure this all out overnight. If I already have an existing process or model or responsibility gene, if you will, about doing the right thing for the data protection. The hard part that I'm seeing is everybody's going out there and building and testing these AI solutions without building in the business outcome. And so what I mean by that, and I'm seeing it everywhere. So I love the idea of repurposing my programs and using what I've already invested in and, my people, process, and tech. The hard part is when somebody walks in, they throw down a magazine and they're like, AI across the entire company in 6 months. Or some people, it's like 6 days. And it's like, okay, well, what's the outcome? And maybe the marketing and BD team want a 20% increase in their, open rate on email, or they want to have higher, percentage of people now reading literature about, their offerings. Okay, well, how is AI really going to get me there? Am I cutting down 2 hours from that team building content? Okay, that may be a good goal, but is it 20% lift, 5% lift? And how do I measure it? Because right now, people are guessing. And I think the hard part is they're going home, and as consumers, they're seeing it everywhere on their phone, on their browser. Hey, it's everywhere. Why can't I operationalize this across an enterprise? Okay, well, what do you want the outcome to be? Because at home, using it personally is much different than deploying it across the entire enterprise.
Sounds so fundamental, Laz, as you say that. And it kind of comes back to a question we had earlier about TPRM. I mean, who actually owns that question? I mean, is it a business strategy? Is it a business owner by business owner perspective? What are you seeing out there with regard to the people that maybe should be considering those questions? And is there anybody doing it right? Not by name, but just in general. Who's leading?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing out there is, and this is an approach I've always leveraged. I mean, this is back decades when I was in the military. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I have to do is I have to understand the outcome. Yep. And if I understand the goal or the outcome, I can work backwards and say, okay, how can we do this? And let's say, I'm going to use the BD example. Hey, so maybe I want 5%. If I'm a salesperson and I'm using this, if I'm a sales leader, let's say I want to build my funnel. My sales funnel should be 5x of where I need to be so I can have visibility into building the business. Okay. If AI can help me get there, great. What's the outcome? That's part one. Part two is when I'm seeing this across an organization, and let's say we're going to crawl, walk, run with an AI problem or something that we're going to go build. The challenge is with AI, it's beautiful. It will not only do that function X, but sometimes there's like this fractal that happens. It's like, whoa, I can now do 500X in different ways and different things that I didn't even think about 2 months ago. Now I'm going to go test it all. And those are some of the really cool things that are happening with AI. Where I've seen it successful is defining the business outcome, picking a group or a department to start testing. My caution there with that group or that department is that they will come back with dozens of new use cases that were never thought of. And we have to be prepared to say, okay, how do we line that up and scale accordingly? It's kind of like I have to have the foundation before I go scale. And if I don't have the business outcome, it's kind of like, hey, look, I have these existing processes. And in the past, I mean, let's just talk about, like openly, right? TPRM helped drive business enablement. Everybody asked, oh, do you have the questionnaire? Do you, back in the day, now I'm dating myself, it was the SIG, it was the PCI, ROC, or it was the SOC 2. And it's like, hey, do you have these? Oh yeah, it's like breathing. And we've got those. Okay. Now with AI, it's kind of like, okay, everything's just been flipped on its head. It's like, I love the fact that you have the AI certification and you have the work that you're doing, and it's getting that message out there. It can be done safely. It can be done responsibly. Where do I start? And that's typically, Robert, I think the biggest challenge is there are so many moving parts. And when you ask, does it work well? Sure, it could work well, crawl, walk, run. But be careful because everybody wants to sprint with AI without having that business outcome.
Yeah. So Jeremy, let me turn that question almost exactly the way Laz teed it up to you. I mean, where does one start? I mean, we built a certification program for AI, and it's been picked up by a number of organizations looking at it. What are they in your conversations with people that are considering it? What are we telling them about where to start? Where do they go first? What do they need to be doing?
Oh yeah, this is an innovation question, right? More so maybe than an assurance question. I guess the caution that Laz is putting out is like begin with the end in mind. It's very true that so many organizations are seeing a shiny object and throwing some attention at it and realizing a lot of potential use cases that they can address without actually saying, hold on, like let's approach this methodically and let's first also ensure we've got the guardrails in place. Because when we touch this tech, we're all going to be excited. Like I'm wowed every day, just in my personal life, about the capabilities of these new AI models, and that's equally true in the business side. So where to begin? I almost think you have to assume the organization somewhere already is using AI. And if you think that's false, you're probably wrong, given that like there's probably some engineer who's using it to vibe code, which I just don't like that term. But anyway, there's probably some engineer who's vibe coding out there, or there's probably someone who's like helping write these great emails that you're seeing come across lately, or beautiful PowerPoints or whatever. Or it could be, hey, I know my finance group is using it to build more accurate forecasts, but I didn't know the rest of my team was as well. So if you begin with the assumption that the organization is already using AI, it changes the conversation from a governance perspective to like, when can I start my AI policy? Like maybe I'll do it one day after we adopt AI. No, actually think about the governance control aspects of it now and the controls associated with that now. So let me set up an inventory process. Let me build questions into my business impact analysis process to further understand at the process level where AI is being used. So if you begin with the assumption it's already in place, it lets you sort of like start building stuff now to control it. And then I think the same is true for your supply chain, tying it back to TPRM. You have to assume that your vendors are very likely using AI, and they may or may not be using it in delivery of the products or services that are relevant to you, but under their roofs too. I think the same has to be true. And if that's the case, then you've got to ask inherent risk questions to all your vendors around their use of AI and the criticality to that AI use for the products and services they're providing to you. So I guess to sum up that long answer, Robert, is to say, basically assume it's already here and prepare accordingly.
Hey, Jeremy, question for you. We've talked about inherent or AI deployers or implementers versus consumers of AI, right? Because the responsibilities of those two parties, if you put them in those boxes, are probably a little bit different. How do you see that complicating the issue, just generally, but also through the lens of TPRM? Because you may have an implementer as a vendor, but you also may have a consumer to a certain degree. So when you're looking at inherent risk, how is that wrinkle make it a little more difficult?
Oh, certainly, yeah. Where the inherent risk is there, like for example, maybe it's a bad model that someone is using because they had bad data governance feeding into the training data of the model. Like that's an inherent risk for people who build models, but it's also like a risk that we all have to consider if we use models. So just because the problem isn't yours under your roof doesn't mean the problem is absent from the equation. In other words, AI is as much a shared responsibility problem as cloud is. If you think about it like this, right? Now, the complicating factor is not all AI model makers and AI platform as a service providers can offer any kind of clarity on, these are the exact controls I'm responsible for when it comes to my AI offering or the AI models that I built. And here's what's left. And this is what you've got to do. Like that conversation is not precise enough yet, in my opinion. But I guess, again, I'd ask Laz, like from a shared responsibility perspective, what do you think? Do you agree, disagree with kind of this world that I'm outlining of shared responsibility, ambiguity by way of AI?
I'll echo what you're saying because what Ryan just brought up, I mean, there is a consumer, there is an implementer, there's somebody that has to govern it. But I think everybody gets so excited about the power of it and the automation and the alleged efficiencies because not many people are gathering the metrics yet about where it's really helping or hurting the company. But I think as we look at it, there's almost like a different lens. If I'm a BI team member, right, business intelligence, I'm looking at it like, hey, I want to get all my data in there and I want to be able to help the business because everybody wants the business to win, right? So the business, in the example I used before, we've got to go build the funnel and we need 5X. Okay, well, BI team's looking at it going, hey, look, if it's set up right, my performance is to help the team or the company win. But am I putting in the right data? Is the data in going to really yield that positive result? And if that 20% lift or that piece of automation is going to be corrupt, wrong, imperfect, now I've got a problem at all multiple layers, right? I'm the implementer, I'm the user, I'm the governance body, big issues. And that's why I like a structured approach with AI. You know, everybody's turning it on. Great. Okay. Who can we go to first and beta test things about that using, right? To Ryan's point, using the processes we already have. 99% of what you have is going to be able to be reused. You have an AUP, an acceptable use policy, or you got a cloud and technology policy. Let's start, reusing and repurposing what we have.
So I'm going to start bringing us to the close here, and we could do this again. And Laz, we probably should do this again because I'm quite confident in 3 months there'll be new things to think about and discuss in this lovely world that we're dealing with here. But what have we not discussed today? Not just in the context of TPRM or AI broadly, but just in that whole space. I mean, have we missed something? Did we not cover a topic or an area that you thought, man, the high trust people should be asking me these questions as we think about this?
I think so we've talked about the structure of TPRM, the program around repurposing what we have like we did with cloud. One thing I'm asked daily, where do I go to stay ahead? Where's a report? Where's a document? Who do I talk to? How do I get involved? Because it's moving so fast, going to an organization that was set up 10 years ago for a certain way of doing things with tech may not be the same group that's evolving today. And that's come up quite a bit. How do I stay ahead? Where do I go to? Who do I talk to? And where do I get my success from? If I'm going to go learn from experience, who do I go talk to? How do I do it?
I'm just sort of reflecting on what we've talked about over the last minutes. And, I think I kind of come down to 4 points. Most everyone is using AI, but sometimes unknowingly, or organizations are using it unknowingly. And Laz, I can't say enough about your counsel to start with the business outcomes. I mean, why are we doing this? If we really want to be governing it, we need to ask ourselves what the value we're creating with it is. And so, I think that's a really clear reminder for us as leaders to lean in on the real problem we're solving, which is the why does this matter problem. And thinking about the structured approach to take today, we don't have to start from whole cloth. There are processes that we live in today, processes we already use, TPRM processes that are working and are mature, unlike some that may be broken. And I think the shared responsibility considerations, as we look at yet another form of new compute to be smart about, is something we can actually learn from and build on, because we already do that pretty well with cloud, and I think we can do that again pretty well with AI as we learn that. And the last bonus point I thought, which I think came in at the very end, but was really valuable, is the people I'm talking to. If I go and talk to people about this problem, this form of tech, they may not be the people I've traditionally gone to. And I think that's sometimes really fair, like data governance people or the CIO or CTO in many progressive organizations. They're probably at the table, but they may not be the driver at the table. It may be somebody in some kind of an AI officer role, which I think is starting to evolve in some companies. So, this is such a novel space. It's going to be different. It's going to be interesting and super compelling. So, Laz, as always, my friend, we love talking to you. Thank you, and I learn a lot from Jeremy and Ryan every day, and I just try to keep up with the brains around the table here. It's fun. So. So with that, we are grateful, and we'll call it a wrap for this episode of Trust Versus. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
So that was a fun conversation, wide-ranging, but I think we touched on a lot of really important concepts that organizations are struggling with today. So hopefully you as a listener got something out of it. Deep, heartfelt thank you to Laz again for his time and expertise. We really appreciate him joining us today. Robert or Ryan, any closing thoughts?
Jeremy, I must confess, as we're having this conversation, I'm like, what's the point we're getting to? We talked about a lot of different things, but I think that's how some of these conversations are really going right now, which gets to the complexity Ryan talked about, as we were opening today. So it's ambiguity of ownership, which I think we've spent a lot of time on. That one really hit me. The fact that AI is having this explosive impact on TPRM. People are also seeing AI is going to solve the problem for us, and I'm not certain that I'm convinced yet, but I'm hopeful that there'll be some value there. We're still kind of moving out of defense and trying to get to playing offense. So, somewhere in this, there was this discussion about our business strategy and is AI going to shape the business strategy, or are we letting AI support our business strategy? And that theme has come to the forefront with Trust Versus in, 2 or 3 episodes now, where we've talked about, is your strategy AI, or is AI supporting your business strategy? And, Laz, you really said it well today. So thank you for that.
I've had these opinions on AI within the context of TPRM, people overthinking it and just people trying to bite the whole elephant or eat the whole elephant. And Laz validated what I'm hearing in the market based on what he's hearing in the market, where people need to just not overthink what they're doing from an AI perspective in TPRM and leverage the existing processes and programs that they have. That really resonated with me. So Laz, thanks again for joining us today.
And that's a wrap for this edition of Trust Versus. Don't forget to tell your friends and subscribe and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show. Till next time.
Till next time, everybody. Have a great day.